Hello everyone. So today we are going to see about the one of the significant topic of financial accounting global settings, and that is our tolerance group. So this was the question in our last session. Field status variant can be assigned to only one or multiple company codes. Okay, so in that session we already discussed this point. The answer would be multiple company codes. Okay, because there's one field status variant can be assigned to multiple company code. Okay. And now moving further, these are the topics that we are going to discuss in detail. So this session is going to be theoretical, which would make each and everything clear. Okay. And you would be proficient to like answer any question if it is asked on any of the topic related to the tolerance group in SAP. So first of all, we would see about the tolerance group, its applicability and its usage in the fields. And then we are going to discuss the three kinds of the types of this tolerance group, and these are tolerance group for user, and then we have the GL tolerance group, and then customer vendor tolerance group, and finally we would be seeing the important tables which stores the data related to these different kinds of tolerance group, and using these table would make you a proficient consultant whether you are in support or you are in implementation project. These tables would be very much assistive to you. Okay, so let's start with our main session. So tolerance group. So if you see, we already know what tolerance means in general life, and we are having group, okay, in SAP. So first of all, I would try to make you understand where actually it is applicable in the real scenario. Okay, so let's suppose in your organization, one employee was there and he was posting or she was posting one invoice, and that invoice was to be posted of amount, let's suppose 10,000. Okay, let me write it 10,000. Okay. Mistakenly, that particular employee added extra zero and posted the invoice of 1 lakh rupee. Okay. So ideally, it was to be posted for 1,000 to 10,000, and due to mistake, it was posted for a 1 lakh. Okay. So in that case, it might be having dire consequences on your financial statements, your reporting, okay, or auditing purposes. So what every organization want these mistakes should not be allowed at the system level itself. Okay, and apart from that, if we take the another example, okay, let's suppose we sold something of 1,000 and we received the payment of like 950. There might be some processing charges or like another deduction might be there. Okay, so now you have to make a decision. For example, out of 1,000 you just got 950, should be accepted or not, you have to tell the system. Okay, so this is another example. And apart from this, we are having the example. Okay, let's suppose you are having the like bifurcated your employees into two groups. The one is junior employees and the another group is the senior employee. You want your junior employees should be able to post amount up to like 10,000, and your senior employees should be able to post amount up to like 1 lakh or 10 lakh. Okay, whatever it can be, it depends like, or it varies with organization to organization. So how this requirement you would be fulfilling in the system. Okay, so all these things, okay, whether you have to prevent the posting, okay, the high number posting, whether you have to accept the difference. For example, the out of 1,000 invoice you are getting 950. Okay, you have to accept that difference or reject that difference, or you have to like make or establish a limit for your junior employee as well as the senior employee. So all these requirements would be accomplished using a tolerance group. I hope it would be clear. Okay, so generally or commonly, what is the meaning or how we can define this tolerance group? So let me mention is, so tolerance group in SAP simply is a configurational object. Okay, so let me write it. Tolerance group is a configurational or just configuration object, and what it does is it actually sets up the boundaries, or we can say the upper limit. Okay, so let me mention it. Upper limits in transaction processing. Okay, word processing, there are multiple kind of transactions. Okay, so in all those transactions, it actually sets up the upper limit, okay, for the multiple thing. And let me add it. And apart from that, by defining the tolerance group, what you do in the system is you actually let me mention it. So let me mention in the next line. By defining the tolerance group, what we do is actually we instruct the system to accept. Okay, so actually I already told you we are defining using this tolerance group a upper limit. Okay, so we are telling the system using this tolerance group what it has to accept. Okay, and over and above that range it has to reject it. Okay, so what are these common things which are controlled using this tolerance group? The one is maximum amount in document. Okay, so it actually defines the overall limit which can be posted in any of the single document. Okay, let's suppose there might be a limit of 10 crore. So in particular single invoice you cannot exceed the limit of amount 1 crore. Okay, or this can be a 10 crore depending on the requirement, okay, or the need of any organization. And the next thing what we can control is amount maximum amount in line item. Okay, line item of document. So above we were giving the limit for our entire document. Now, for example, in any of the document, we might have the hundreds of the line item. So in each line item, what should be the upper limit, also which is also controlled by this particular tolerance group. Okay, so you can define what maximum amount a line can accept of a document. Okay, and apart from that, there's what we can like control maximum payment difference. So when we started this session, I already told you, for example, the 100 invoice we are getting 950. So there we were getting a difference of 50. So you can define what like difference you allowing your system to accept in case like accepting the payment or sending the payment. So this is how you control it using this maximum payment difference. And next you can like control maximum cash discount. Okay. So while you are posting an invoice, you can tell the system the maximum discount which can be given is this particular figure. Okay. So now let me mention some of the key points, okay, related to this tolerance group, which are very much significant from the interview perspective. Okay. So if someone asks technically, like what is the tolerance group? Okay. The simple answer would be it is a 4-character alphanumeric key in SAP. Okay. 4-character alphanumeric key. And next, the question comes is always in the financial accounting global settings where this particular configurational object or at what level it is defined. Okay, so we know this is defined at company code level. Okay, always remember this. It is not defined at the client level. So it means it is a company code specific. Okay, and another important thing you have to remember when you will enter the screen of this tolerance group, which we are going to see in our next session. Okay, so when you will enter that screen you would be having three options. Okay, like for example you can give the absolute amount. For example, in case of like you have to accept the difference, you can give the absolute amount like 50, 60 or anything else. You can also give the percentage, and apart from that, for example, you can utilize the both also. So how it works is like if you want absolute value, that is also fine. If you don't want absolute value, keep it blank. If you want like a percentage which should play the role of tolerance, okay, you can give the percentage also alone, okay, without giving the absolute value. or you can maintain both absolute value as well as the percentage. Okay, so let me write it. It can be defined either as an absolute value or as a percentage. And apart from that, you can mention like both also. So it's up to you. You can just give the absolute value and keep the field of percentages blank, or you can give the percentage alone, keeping the absolute value as a blank. Okay. Now, how, for example, you gave both the percentage as well as the absolute value. Okay. So let's suppose you are having an invoice of 100, and in your system, you want the like maximum discount at a 5%. Okay, so let me mention this. Okay, so amount is 100 and you want maximum percentage of the tolerance group is 5, and apart from that the amount which you want to give is 10. Okay, so this is what, let me align it. Now there is another invoice of, let's suppose, 1000, and here also you are giving like 5%. Let me just mine it, and then the 10 rupee absolute amount. Okay, so we can mention here also it is a percentage and it is a amount which is a absolute value. Okay, so these are the two examples by which you can understand how actually it works. Okay, so let's suppose there is an invoice posted of 100 rupees, and you have defined a limit that up to 5% the discount is, or you can say the difference is allowed, or up to 10 rupees it is allowed. Okay, so what would be the amount if you take the 5%? Okay, so the 5% of 100 would be 5 only. Okay, so for example, there is a invoice which is being posted of a difference. For example, you are having the invoice of 100 and you are getting the amount which is 94. Okay, so now the question comes is whether system should allow the difference or not, or it should block that posting. So the answer would be system would be blocking it. Why? Because the difference between the original invoice 100 and the amount which you are receiving is 6. Okay, which is a 6%, which is exceeding your tolerance, which is exceeding your upper limit. Okay, so how it works is, if both the like fields are given, percentage and the absolute values are given, it will always consider the lowest value. Okay, or it will always consider the first criteria which is met. Okay, so in this, if you see the difference, for example, if you see the percentage was 5 and the absolute was 10, so whenever system come here, it will see the invoice, it is 100, and then it will, for example, you are getting invoice of 94. Okay, the amount of 94, it will validate. Okay, it will say, okay, so it will come to the percentage. It will say if we calculate the percentage of the tolerance group, it is 5, so it will see if we are getting the 1 rupee lesser than the limit, so it will block that invoice. It won't allow the uh, payment of that invoice. Okay, it won't be going here. Okay, similarly, let's suppose if you come here, there's an invoice of 1000 and you received, for example, the 960. Okay, or 960, let me mention. Okay, here we were getting 96. Okay, let me give 94. Yeah, 94. So here now system, what will system do? System will say we are having a difference of like 40 rupee. Okay, so I told you it will be triggered at the lowest value. If you see the 5%, 5% is what of this 1000, it is simply a 50. Okay, so system will consider it is already under a tolerance. Okay, 40 is a difference, it is under a percentage 50, but it will be triggered at this absolute amount itself. System will say in the absolute we are having a limit of 10 rupee only, so I should block it. System will block this particular payment or the payment difference. Okay, so this is how it works. System always consider or trigger at the lowest value among the percentage as well as the absolute amount. I hope the example would be clear to you. So let me mention that point. It is very much important because this issue or the scenario you will encounter in day-to-day life when you are working in your real-time projects. Okay, so let me mention the system will use lowest value among percentage. Let me give percentage sign and absolute amount. Let me just mention amount. Okay. So between these two, system will always pick the lowest value, whether it comes from the percentage or it comes from the absolute amount. Okay. So next one, another important key point regarding the tolerance group is there is a one category of the tolerance group which is known as the null tolerance group. Okay, or it is simply a blank tolerance group. What it does is most of the time you will see in the system when you will like defining your tolerance group, these are blank. Okay, so whenever the blank tolerance group is there, this four character alphanumeric key would be missing and the company code just would be given. Okay, so what happens is in that case whatever or whosoever is having the access or the authorization for that company code where the tolerance group is blank. Okay, so it means the whatever the setting you are doing, okay, in that blank or the null tolerance group would be applicable to all the users having the authorization in that particular specific or the specific company code. Okay, so let me mention it. What it does is it actually assigns tolerance to all users under that code. And so you created a tolerance group which is blank and just created under that company code, which because I have already told you the tolerance group is defined at the company code level. So once you define any null tolerance group like the blank tolerance group and maintain the setting, so all the users of this particular company code would be having all the settings of that tolerance group would be applicable to the users. Okay, so this is how it actually works. So this particular point you will understand when we will be discussing the tolerance group for employees or user. Okay, so moving next, let me just mention the so here we are going to discuss about the three important type of tolerance group in SAP. Okay, so we are having three categories. So let me mention we are having three types of tolerance group. Okay, let me just come down. And what are these? So first of all, we are having the tolerance group, which is known as the employee or the user tolerance group. Okay. So in technical, you can mention it as a tolerance groups for employees, or simply you can mention the users. Okay, so for this we are having T code OBA4. Okay, I will mention it when we are individually discussing all these three tolerance group. Okay, so let me come up. So tolerance group for employees and users. And second thing, before like moving to the second tolerance group, let me mention one another important point. Okay, once you define tolerance group for users or employee, never forget to assign user to the tolerance group. Okay, and it is a kind of mandatory. Okay, if you don't do this you won't be having access to do any of the postings, okay, related to GLNT because your ID would be missing in a tolerance group. Okay, so this thing I will also tell you in detail further. So the second category of the type of tolerance group is tolerance, which is one of the also most important tolerance for groups of GLs. Okay, group of GLs accounts. And always remember it is applicable on the local currency. This point you remember it because it might be asked in a interview. Okay, so it will consider a local currency. Local currency is a company code currency. I believe you know that. And next important tolerance group is customer vendor tolerances. Okay, so let me mention customer vendor tolerances. Okay, so these are the three important tolerance group. So now we are going to discuss each one of this, okay, one by one in detail. So the first one is tolerance. Let me write it in bold. Tolerance groups for employees, okay, or slash users. Okay. So first of all, before explaining you what is the use word, how screen looks like, first of all, I would be mentioning the T code and the path. Okay. So while we are going in our practical session, you won't be having any issue or you won't be having any trouble to reach that particular screen because these two things are very much important. So you should know the T code if you are using the SAP GUI. Okay. In Fiori, we mostly having a path. Okay, it's not look like the GUI, but it is a kind of path only. So we would be seeing both to enhance our efficiency in the productivity. So the T code for this tolerance group for employees is OBA4. Okay, always remember this point. And next we are going to discuss the path. So you already know the path is actually a step by step approach or the step by step journey to reach the desired screen in SAP. Okay. So what we give the T code in a path is SPRO, and then the financial accounting, and further we have financial accounting global settings. Okay, always remember this. I'm using short, and then we are having document. So under the financial accounting global setting, you would be having documents and then tolerance groups. And finally, once you click on the tolerance groups, you would be having option called defined tolerance groups for employees. Okay. So if you follow this particular path or if you give this particular transaction code, you are going to reach to this screen tolerance group for employees and users. Okay. So now coming to the main point, the explanation of this particular tolerance group. So what happens is this tolerance group is actually applicable on any of the user. Okay. So any of the user means whosoever is using or utilizing the SAP, it is applicable for all of them. Okay. So what it does is I will write in like pointers. So it actually controls the maximum, okay, amount any particular user can post. Amount a user or an user can post. Okay, so it actually limits or put the upper limit on any of the user, what amount that user can post in any of the document. It can be a vendor invoice, customer invoice, GL, anything. Okay, and apart from that, it also, for example, I told you initially when we were discussing generally about the tolerance group. Okay, we are having the maximum amount at the document level, maximum amount at the line item level, okay, or the maximum amount in terms of payment differences. Okay, so this particular tolerance group for employees controls the amount an user can post, like in whole the amount can be posted. Also the per document, okay, it controls the per document amount also, and also the per open item. Okay, so there is a open item, okay, and the user is trying to like create an invoice to create an open item. Okay, so in that case mostly when the open item you create when you post the vendor or the customer entry, okay, or the posting or the vendor or the customer invoice posting, in that case you are posting actually a open item, so that will create a open item entry in your system. So actually using this tolerance group for employees, you are having an option to put a limit on creating that open invoice. Okay, and after that we are having, for example, any particular user can give how much discount, so it also control maximum cash discount by user. Okay. So it is for every like user only. So per document, per open item, okay, and the maximum cash discount by user which can be given. And I already told you all of these things are applicable. Let me mention applicable for all types of postings. And these postings are GL or the vendor, the customer. Okay. So these tolerance group settings are applicable for all types of posting, GL, vendor, and customer. Now next we are having this the tolerance group for GL account. But before that, I would like to clarify like some more thing related to the tolerance group for employees or the user. Okay. So one thing we have already seen, we are having one as a blank. Okay. If you let me mention blank group. So let's suppose if you are creating a tolerance group for employees coming to this screen and you just kept your tolerance actually as a blank only. Okay, you didn't give any four character alphanumeric key. So in that case, what will happen is I have already told you this tolerance group, the settings, whichever you are maintaining, like per document, what is the amount, and the per open item, what is the amount or the maximum discount you have maintained. So all these settings of the user tolerance group would be applicable to all the users of the company code. Okay, where you are maintaining this tolerance group of user. Okay, so just let me mention using this group, what will happen is every single user in that company code defaults to the limits defined under blank tolerance group. Okay, I think the picture would be quite crystal clear when we would be doing a configuration practically. Okay, in the next session, blank tolerance group I'm giving teaching. Okay, and another thing, for example, there might be a requirement from the project. Okay, while you are implementing it, so the project saying we have bifurcated, let's suppose, our employees into two groups or three groups. For the sake of simplicity, we are like taking two groups, the junior groups and the senior groups. Okay, so for you, this user want this, your project want, if we want to bifurcate our employees into junior and senior, and we want to like give varying limit, okay, to both the group. For example, the junior group should be able to post the lesser amount and the senior group should be able to post the higher amount. Or in terms of discount also, like junior employee should be able to give like 1% discount and the senior should be able to give 2% of the discount. Okay. So there can be multiple requirement, okay, bifurcating your employees into two groups. So what actually we do is we actually create a special group. A special group means we actually give like four character alphanumeric key in the same company code where we are giving the blank tolerance group. Okay. So what will happen is here you can maintain the limits or the settings for your junior employees, keeping the blank as a company code. And here you can give under a special company code, maintain the limits which are higher than the junior. Okay. And give the company code. So what will happen is actually it will have to be integrated in the next step when you will assign your tolerance group to the user IDs. Okay, so you have to assign actually user IDs also. So there how the difference occurs. So you created two groups, one is blank, one is special. In the special you maintain some higher values for your senior employees, and in blank you maintain some lower values as compared to the special group. Okay, so I can just mention here is, okay, for example, it can cater to special requirement for set of employees. Okay. So I told you, okay, after that creation and everything, tolerance group for employees, you have to mandatorily assign, let me mention, assign users to tolerance groups. Okay, so this is the significant or the most important steps, I would say. Okay, because without this, you won't be able to do any of the operations in terms of like posting or anything. Okay, so how it is accomplished? Okay, I will tell you what actually is done here. So let me mention what is the T code firstly. So the T code to reach the screen is OB57. Okay, and then we are having the path also. So let me mention the SPRO, and then we are having this financial accounting, and then we have financial accounting global settings, and then the documents I told you already, and then the tolerance group. So it is similar to above only, just here you can find a difference. Tolerance group, and finally we have the assign user tolerances. Okay, so there we go. In this particular screen, you would be able to see the IDs, LAN IDs of the users in this particular screen. Okay, so actually you have to maintain your IDs here, the LAN IDs or the system IDs, whatever is assigned to you. Okay, so what happens is here you have to maintain your IDs. Okay, so let's suppose what will happen is here you would be able to see the two columns. One is, let's suppose, user, and the other is tolerance group. Okay, so the tolerance group might be blank, okay, but user would always be maintained here. If your user ID is missing, then it means you don't have authorization to do posting and anything, because once you try to do it, you are going to end up with the errors only. Okay, so I can just mention, let's suppose uh, we discussed the requirement. Okay, about, for example, we are having the set of employee who are junior, and the another set is for seniors. Okay, let's suppose for the juniors I'm giving their system ID as X. Okay, and then there might be multiple. Okay, each individual ID would be maintained here. Let's suppose X, Y, Z. We are having these junior employees, and let's suppose we are having senior employees as like K or then K. Okay, so in this case, what I will do is I will keep this particular area as a blank. Okay, so what will happen is, so the tolerance group which you created blank and you gave the company code, so the user having authorization of the company code would be having the applicability of the limit which you define under a this blank group. Okay, so we just keep it in the middle, and now we are having this special employees. Okay, so for this special employees, let's suppose we created a special group. I can give here, let's just uh, special group India Tata Limited we are having as the IT. Okay, so we can just give here SGIT. This is the four character alphanumeric key you can give as per your requirements, okay, or the business naming conventions. Okay, we have given here a special group India Tata Limited. Okay, so this is how once you are done with the setting, so your system will understand whenever this user is posting any entry, I should apply the settings or the limits which are given in the special group. If any of these if any of these employees is doing any posting or like accepting any payment, anything, I should apply the settings or the limits visible in the blank group, okay, for that particular company code, because I told you these tolerance groups are company code specific. Okay, so let me mention these points also just for your remembrance. Okay, so it is mandatory define user ID in OB57. Okay. Even, let me mention that point also, even if the tolerance group is blank. Okay, remember this point. If you don't define it, if not defined, let me mention, you won't be able to, you won't be able to do any postings. Okay. So these are the two important points you have to remember. Okay. So now we would be moving next to our next kind of, or the next category of the tolerance. So, okay. And that is a, let me mention, tolerance. Let me give in bold, tolerance for groups of GLs. Okay. We discussed it. Groups of GL accounts. And I told you it would be applicable for the local currency. Okay, I'm reiterating it. Okay, so first of all, we would be mentioning the T code as usual. So the T code is OBA0. Okay, remember this. And then we are having the path. Let me mention it quickly. SPRO, the same, financial accounting, and then we are having, okay, here the different thing, we don't have this financial accounting global setting. It now comes under the general ledger part, okay, because it is for GL. So here we are having GL accounting, or simply the general ledger accounting. And then you will have business transactions, okay, and further you will have open item clearing, and next you will be having clearing differences, okay, and finally you will have, let me mention it, define tolerance group for GL accounts, okay. So this is the complete path to reach the screen of this tolerance group for GL account, okay. So here also we have to remember some important points. So what actually it is, like what is the purpose of the tolerance group for GL accounts? So simply it controls the differences. Okay, while you are like clearing the open item of the GL. So let me mention it. It controls the differences. Okay, because you might be having invoice of 100 and we are having the offsetting entry of a 90 rupee, okay, debit and credit. So here is a difference of 10. So whether it should, like the system should allow it to write off or not. If it will allow, then the system will be able to post the difference will go to a difference account. Okay, so let me mention it. It controls the differences when clearing open items for GL accounts. Okay, and it is also applicable while you are doing the automatic like clearing. So you people would be knowing, I believe. So automatic clearing in SAP is done using a T code F.13. Okay, so here actually you can do the mass clearance of the line item of the GLs or the vendors or the customers. Okay, so we are talking with reference to the GL account. So using this particular T code F.13, which is applicable for a kind of GL account, let me mention GRIR. You would have heard GRIR. GRIR are good receipt and the invoice receipt GL accounts. Okay, or it can be related to the bank GLs. Okay, let me mention bank GLs. So using this particular T code, you can clear the line item of the GRIR, bank GL accounts. Okay, and from where it actually controls, like the if there is a difference in the debit and the credit entries, it actually takes the limits. Okay, whatever the differences you have allowed in the tolerance for groups of GL account. Okay, so here it will check it. And we can say, let me mention one another important point, or I would say you note it somewhere. So how it would be applicable to any GL? Okay, let's suppose you went there because you are not giving any GL, you are just giving the company code and the 4 character alphanumeric key. So what happens is you actually do is you this particular like tolerance group is assigned to GL. Let me mention it is assigned to GL master record. Okay, or we can say GL master data, and where under there is a tab control data. Okay. So under this tab, you are going to maintain this tolerance group. Okay. So because you would be creating the GL under the same company code against which you have created a tolerance. Okay. And then you can assign your tolerance group under this particular control tab. In the next session, practically, we would be seeing in a system. One more thing you have to remember here. Let's suppose we gave the company code and kept the tolerance group for the GL account as a blank. What would happen? So all the GLs, whatever are maintained in that specific company code, would be having application of the tolerance limit, okay, which are defined under that blank tolerance group, okay, for the tolerance group of GL accounts. Okay, so in that scenario, there won't be any need to define any of the tolerance group under the GL master data under the tab control data, because that would be automatically blank and all the settings would be applicable of that blank tolerance group of GL accounts. I hope it would be clear to you. Okay. And this is applicable, for example, you are doing the clearance of the GL. So that would be applicable for all the GLs which are having the blank tolerance group. Okay. Under that particular company code. Next, we are going to discuss about the another important tolerance group, which is the customer vendor tolerances. Let me take it to down and then we will be discussing it. So now what is the purpose and use of this tolerance group is? So first of all, let me mention the T code and the path quickly. So the T code for this is OBA3. Okay. And the path is SPRO, which is quite different from the above. Okay. Financial accounting. Let me mention it. Financial accounting. And then we are having accounts receivable AR and accounts payable. Okay, remember that I'm using a short forms. And then we are having this business transactions, and further we are having open item clearing, and next we have the clearing differences, because it is used for clearing the difference of the payment mostly. Okay, define tolerances for customer as well as the vendors. Okay, I hope you will remember this point. Let me just adjust it. Okay, so this is the complete path to reach that particular screen. Okay, now let me just tell you some of the important pointers. Okay, so what it controls is, when you enter this particular screen, you would be having option of like giving the payment difference. Okay, so let me mention it. It actually controls how system handles payment differences. Simply, you can say a limit we actually give here as we were giving in the above. Okay, and there are mostly two scenarios, which is underpayment and the overpayment. Okay, so here you would be having more controls under this particular scheme as compared to the GL and the user tolerance group. You are having the like multiple fields here under the customer vendor tolerances. So it is applicable majorly for the underpayment, overpayment. So it not only controls like what difference is actually allowed while clearing the vendor or the customer invoice. It also tells in case of like overpayment, okay, what should be the behavior of the system. In case of underpayment, okay, what should be the behavior of the system. And there is a functionality of the payment advice also we would discuss. Payment advice also. Okay, and apart from that, once we go to the like SAP screen while doing the practical, okay, it will tell you okay, how using this particular setting system can post the residual items. I will explain you what are these residual items while we are doing that practically in the system. Okay, and it will also show you the payment differences applicable while doing like posting or clearing the line item with the payment manually as well as automatically. Okay, and it will also tell you about the uh, like fixing the payment terms, okay, to the vendor invoice or the customer, or the calculation of the net due date. So multiple fields would be there under a customer vendor tolerances, and that we are going to see in detail in our practical session, because you won't be able to understand everything and might be confused. Okay, so let me just tell you where actually this particular group, this tolerance group for the customer vendor, is assigned to the particular customer vendor. Okay, so let me mention it is assigned to customer and vendor in their master data. Okay, like the GL master data. So now the question comes is where in the master data? Okay, so these are defined under a tab vendor. Okay, customer. Okay, in case of customer, vendor customer payment transaction, payment transaction, and where you will find it under a company code segments. Okay, because we are having the different level of data. If you go to the customer or the vendor master data, for example, the company code data, sales area data, or you can say the purchasing organization data, the general data, the company code data. So the company code segment would be having this particular field vendor first payment transaction. Under that, you would be having a tolerance group option to give your tolerance group of your vendor as well as the customer. Okay, so this is how you actually define your tolerances for vendor and the customer. Okay. So let me just mention quickly the tables. Okay. As I told you in the starting of the sessions, we are going to see the tables. These would be helping you while you are creating new tolerance groups. For example, finding the tolerance group which are already there in the system, as well as while you are doing the like troubleshootings in case of the support project. These are going to help you while you are doing the troubleshooting. Okay, to see whether the values are maintained, what values are maintained. Like if you want to see the list, so the tables would be helping you. So first of all, we would be writing the table and the description. Description. Okay. So the first table is, let me mention, it is T043. Okay. So always remember the tolerance group, all the tables would be having this initial T043, and then we add the T. Okay. So what does it mean is it contains the data of when we like define tolerance groups for employees. Okay. So remember this, the data, whatever we are defining here, okay, it will be saved in this particular table. The next table is T043 simply, and it is used for the next part I told you, which is very much important or mandatory, like assign user to tolerance group, okay, which is a mandatory. Oh, sorry, I just gave the T043. It should be just T043 only. Okay. And the next is T043S. Okay. As we already know, whenever we say the SA, so it means a GL document. So it is for your tolerance group of the GL account. So what a screen is represents defined tolerance tolerance groups for GL accounts. Okay. And next we are having the, or we can say the final table is T043G. Okay. And it is used for defined tolerance groups for customer as well as the vendors. Okay. So we, for example, the application I have already told you, if you have to like clear the line items, okay, or if you have to just clear the offsetting line item of the customer using a T code F-32. Okay, so in that case, your particular that customer should have the tolerance group maintained under this particular table, or we can say under this particular screen which we defined using a T code OBA3. Okay, so this is how the table works. Let me just quickly put it under a table. Okay, we have given it. Let me keep coloring also. Okay, so these are the important table. You should remember it. Okay, now we would be going to our important section of the question answers. Okay, so the first question is where is GL account tolerance group typically used? Okay, so where it is used is when you are doing the clearing. Okay, and which type of clearing? Automatic GL clearing. Okay, using T code F.13. I told you. Okay, F.13. Why it is coming like that? Let me give F.13. F.13. Okay. And next question is, which I want all of you to give the answer in the comment section, which is, can tolerance group be left blank? Okay, in the above scenario, can it be left blank? I think this point we have discussed in each category or type of tolerance. So I hope you would be giving the answer of this question in the comment section. So that's all for today. We would be continuing the next lecture, the practical configuration of the tolerance group, and we would discuss each and every field available in the SAP. Thank you.